Hello, everyone. Before we get into the lesson for today, I got to tell you that I just had this really bizarre coincidence thing just happen, and it has to do with something I was going to talk about in this lesson. So to find out what it is, you're going to have to stay tuned. But it's sort of creepily weird what just happened. So I will tell you when I get to that point in the lesson, though, and I'll describe it then. A little bit of a detour at that point. But what we're actually going to be talking about today is not my weird, creepy coincidence, but restorative justice, because today is the beginning of Restorative Justice Week. Now, personally, I had never heard of restorative justice before, the phrase or what it actually is. So this was all new to me, and it's pretty interesting stuff. And maybe some of you are familiar with it. So what does that mean? Restorative justice. Well, restore means to put something back the way it was, to make things right again. And justice means doing things in a way that are fair. So making things right again in a fair way. That sounds pretty good, right? So all of us make mistakes. Sometimes we aren't kind to other people. We might hurt someone else. And sometimes it's a big mistake. And sometimes the hurt may feel like something that it can't be healed, whether you have made a mistake in hurting someone or when you have been the victim and been hurt by someone else. So the question that we ask on Restorative Justice Sunday is, so what do we do about those people who have wronged us? Do we punish them so that they'll know how much they have hurt us? Or do we help them learn from their mistakes and give them a chance to make things right again for everyone? So I'm going to share with you two stories that can help us to understand how this might work. The general idea with restorative justice is that the victim has a chance to have a conversation with the person who has wronged them, whether they were hurt by them, whether they were, had a crime committed against them. And they can ask them their questions. The victim can ask questions of the person who wronged them. And usually there's a facilitator involved, and it's sort of done in a very safe environment so that everyone can feel comfortable. So here's the first story I'm going to read you. This is true. These are both true stories. This one happened several years ago in a town in Minnesota. And one Sunday morning, the people at a local church went to worship only to discover that someone had painted graffiti all over the outside wall of their church building. And it was a huge mess. They had drawn some pictures, they weren't even very good ones, and written some not so nice words. The people in the church were very hurt and angry by this, because who would do that at the sign of the church? That's pretty bad. So a few days later, the police showed up. I don't know why it took them that long, but I guess it was Sunday. The police showed up at the church and, to tell the minister that they had found the three boys that had done the graffiti, and they had arrested them. And the police told the minister that they could charge the boys and they'd probably go to court. But the police said they also had another idea. In that town in Minnesota, people often try to practice this idea of restorative justice, where people who are harmed by someone else sit in a circle and with the person who has harmed them, along with friends of both of those people, and they talk it all through. The church council met and they decided they were willing to give it a shot, although a lot of them didn't really think it would work. They didn't think it would make much of a difference. Some people at the church said, we should just lock these boys up and throw away the key. But they said they'd come to the restorative justice circle to see what it was all about. So lots of people from the church and from the community turned out for the circle. The woman leading it came from another church, and she knew what this people of this church must be going through. Everyone in the circle had a chance to talk. The church people told the boys how hurt they were, and the boys listened. They weren't allowed to say anything back until it was their turn. When it was their turn, they talked about how they were just bored because there didn't seem to be anything to do. And this time, the church people had to Other people talked, and after a while, the boys apologized. The church people believed the boys' apology, and they made a suggestion. If the boys would come to scrub the graffiti off the wall, then that matter would be finished. So a few Sundays later, some of the church people came too, when the boys went to clean up the church walls. And they worked together, both the boys and people from the congregation of the church. It was hard work, but they got the job done. At lunchtime, the man who had originally said that the boys should just be locked up and throw the key away, he came to the church with pizza for everyone, and they all enjoyed it together. And then they went back to work to finish up the job. So many people thought this was a lot better than just punishing the boys. Instead, what happened is they all learned a little bit about each other, and they learned how to work together. Some of them learned how to say, "I'm sorry," and others learned how to say, "I forgive you," which are both not easy. Both of those things can be very hard to say. So learning to do that, and the communication, that's what restorative justice is all about. So another story I will do here. This is about Aaron Sampson, a 15-year-old boy who was robbed by some boys who had previously been bullying him at school. So a restorative justice meeting gave him a chance to regain his confidence. So in the story I'm going to tell you, Aaron and his mother tell their stories. So Aaron says, "I was walking to my friend's house to play football. As I turned a corner, I saw 3 boys from my school. I'd had problems with these boys before. When they saw me, they pushed me up against a fence, started asking me what I had in my pockets. They pushed me down on the ground and started going through my pockets, but all I had on me was my phone, which I'd gotten for Christmas, so they took that. I couldn't fight back. There were 3 of them. I just ran to my friend's house and we called the police." So Linda, his mom, said, "Aaron's had a troubled school life. He's not a big boy and he's had some medical problems, including very severe eczema. He was picked on constantly from about year 4 at school. And one of the lads who robbed him was one of the bullies who'd picked on him in the past. He's always been very timid and quiet, but this past couple of years, he'd really started coming out of himself. And so the robbery was a real setback. Thinks the school had been bad for about a month," she said. This particular bully had beaten Aaron up and threatened to knife him, so he'd been excluded from the school. That day they saw Aaron walk around the corner and obviously thought, "Right, we're gonna get him." So Aaron says, the police found the boys about a half an hour later near where they'd robbed me. Anthony, which is not his real name, the one who was carrying my phone, pleaded guilty. He and one of the others were expelled from my school, but I still had to see the 3rd boy there. I was worried at first, but I didn't think he'd cause trouble without his mates there. Everyone was talking about what had happened. I tried not to let it get to me, and I knew my friends would look out for me." So Linda, his mom, says, "About a month after the trial, we got a letter from Nadia, the victim contact officer at Luton Youth Offending Services, asking if Aaron wanted to meet Anthony, one of the boys who had beaten him and robbed him. Aaron thought about it for a week. I explained to him what would happen and how the meeting would work, and he also discussed it with his teacher at school. Aaron said, I was scared at first because I didn't know what Anthony was going to say, the boy that had robbed him, or what his reaction would be. In the end, I decided to meet him because I wanted to face my fears. I wrote some questions down. I really thought about them because I wanted to get the best possible answers. They were basic questions like, why did you do it? What did you think would happen afterwards? It's not like I'm never going to see you again. Linda said, I hope the meeting would give Aaron more confidence in himself and his abilities. He's been through quite a lot over the years. On the bus on the way to the meeting, he was very quiet. He was very nervous and shaky going in. We thought Anthony would already be in the room with his parents, but it had been arranged so they entered the room first. And that made a big difference to Aaron. Aaron said, on the way to the meeting, I felt all right, but as soon as I saw Anthony's face, it started getting a bit nerve-wracking. There's a big circle of people, and we all introduced ourselves. I asked Anthony, why did you do it? His answer was that he wasn't the main person. It was his mate's idea, and he didn't think his mate would go through with it. He was really apologetic, but I didn't really want an apology. For me, the point of the meeting was so I could move on. Linda, his mom, said, when Aaron asked Anthony how he thought he was going to get away with it, he said, I didn't think you'd call the police. He looked remorseful, and he told us he's not hanging around with the same boys anymore and has more focus on what he wants to do with his life. Aaron says, since the meeting, it's still in the back of my head, but it's not worrying me as much now. What Anthony said in the meeting was true. I know he won't bother me anymore. Linda said, I would encourage other young people to meet their offenders to show them the real consequences of what they've done. Aaron has a sister at the same school, so it had an effect on her. She worried she might get targeted. Aaron's dad's reaction was that we shouldn't let him go out anymore in case something were to happen to him. But that wouldn't work. You can't wrap teenagers in cotton wool. That would have been my dad's reaction. Nope, you're locked in the house. There's a whole barrel of consequences to do. There's a whole barrel of consequences to do with a child and their family. It's the whole package. It's not just the one act. Aaron says, I tell my mates to do restorative justice if it came up. It's a chance to ask as many questions as you want, and I think it's good to get information. It gives you a chance to stand up for yourself. And Linda wrapped up saying, before meeting Anthony, Aaron was quite frightened about going out of the house. I'd have to walk with him to and from school just in case someone was waiting outside for him. And that's changed now. He goes and plays football with his friends. He's better about going on his own. He's got more confidence since the meeting, and he has moved on. So that's the power of what restorative justice can do by sitting with people and talking with them and asking questions. And it's really about understanding, right? It's, why did you do this? Well, look at how I feel. And having that conversation, it can allow you to move on. You can feel safer. So I want you to think about a time in your life when you were wronged or hurt by someone, and think about that person, and maybe that person was punished, but maybe if something at school when they got a detention or something, we can never talk to them about it. And what would you do? What do you when you see them in the hallways or something? How do you feel and how do you act? And think about if you had the chance to sit down with that person and other people who love and support you to ask them, why did you do this? This is how I felt. Like, think about what that conversation might be like and how it might help you move on. I mean, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about two instances. One, when I about a year ago, when I came back from hiking a big trail in Vermont, and I got back to my car after having left it there for 2 weeks while I was hiking, and the window had been smashed in, and I had stuff stolen from it. But the only thing in there was a bag with a couple of dirty clothes to put on when I got back. So here these people, I was going to say guys, but people smashed in my window, and all they got was some dirty, like a dirty pair of jeans and a shirt, an old toothbrush. Meanwhile, I had to drive home, 8-hour drive home in a cold October day, with no window, which was cold, among other things, and then go get it fixed, and repairs and bills, and they didn't even get anything out of it. So I was thinking about if I had been able to ask them, like, why did you do it? And honestly, I bet part of it's the same reason as these kids that had messed with this boy Anthony, is that it's probably partly out of boredom in this town in way northern Vermont, and a rather destitute thing too. So maybe it was a way they could find things they could sell. And it's a problem in that area. And the other thing that I was thinking about, so this is where the bizarre coincidence comes in. So the other time I was thinking about, when I was mugged when I was in Costa Rica, and I had a gun held up to my head. And I remember thinking at the time, and I didn't have much on me, so it wasn't too big a deal, but I was having a gun held to my head. And I remember thinking at the time, I had fought him off. Like he was on his bike, and I won't go into the full story, but I sort of knocked him off the bike because he grabbed the bag and I wouldn't let it go. And we were both tugging on it, which is stupid. Even the bag was like this garage sale thing. It was the principle of it. But as soon as that gun was held to my head, I paused and I thought, it's really worth it. And I didn't actually think he was going to use the gun, but there wasn't really anything of value in there. Not worth it, just in case he decides he does want to use it. So I let it go. And he ran off. But one of the things I would thinking about sitting down with that person, what would I ask that boy? I would probably, one of the things, if I could tell that we actually were, if it got into an honest conversation and these other people around it was a comfortable environment, I might ask him, did you intend to use that gun? Would you have used it if I didn't let go of this bag with nothing in it? Among other things. So, okay, so the bizarre coincidence. So when I do online meetings or record these videos, I prop my laptop on books like everyone does. And I have lately I've been using these 2 photo albums that are rather thick. And I've been using them for ages. And I had this afternoon, I had a meeting, I took them out, I put them back, and I just took them out again. And right before I did this recording, I took them out to prop my laptop up. And even though I've been removing those albums from that bookcase like many, many, many times before, this time something fell out of them. And what it was is I couldn't figure it out at first. It was it's in Spanish. And I don't know if I would have figured it out as quickly if I didn't have this incident in Costa Rica in my mind when I was mugged at gunpoint. What it is I reported it. I ended up going to the county police department and sitting all day and had to give the story. And then I actually picked him out in a lineup. It's a bizarre experience. But what this document is whatever I signed, or it was something from that day from the police when I went to report this guy and to pick him out in the lineup. And that fell out for these albums right before I was going to tell the story in this video. And even though I've been like moving these albums like forever, like in and out of that bookcase, it was today, this evening, right before I did this video, that this fell out. Isn't that bizarre? I don't know. It has me a little creeped out. So I don't know what it means, but it's interesting. So yeah, anyway, but it's interesting to think about, like, in both of those instances, what I might have asked these people and how it might have helped me and how it might have made me feel better. And maybe in the end, it could have helped them as well. So this one's gotten a little long, but before I let you go, I just want to bring your attention to, there is a Restorative Justice Institute of Maine. And I'm going to share my screen here. And just to let you know that it exists, because I didn't know it exists, that it existed. I didn't even know about restorative justice. So, if you or someone has been hurt in some way, or if you feel like you've done something not so great to someone else, you can contact Harm and Conflict. If you've done harm, you can contact this organization and they will not judge you and they will help you. Or if you have had harm done to you, if you're a survivor of some sort of victim of some sort of incident, you can contact them as well if you feel like a restorative justice session might help you get through it. And I will just end with something in their overview of how it works that I thought really summed up well what restorative justice is all about. And they say it's designed to allow the people involved in a harmful situation to tell their story, seek healing and repair, and move forward with safety and resilience. So I will leave it there. Have a great week. I will see you next time.